This course is going to be about Nestjs. Nestjs is a Node.js server-side framework, and out of the box, it uses TypeScript as its programming language, though we can use it with JavaScript. And in order for us to send HTTP requests and responses with Nestjs, we need a HTTP server, and Node.js can be used with different server-side frameworks like Express.js or Fastify. So in this case, Nest.js uses Express.js by default, and we can configure to use Fastify if we need. And before I continue, we would need to install the Nest.js CLI globally on our machine. And this will enable us to have the Nest binary that we can use to run commands. In order for us to install the Nest.js CLI, I would come over to my terminal. And if you're on Linux, you might need to add sudo in front and run npm install at nestjs/CLI. Now we need to install this globally, and I'll add the -g flag here. Now, while that's going on, I would come back and let me quickly take some time out to explain how we are going to be learning Nest.js. So this is going to be a series tutorial, and in series I mean it's going to be a couple of videos, and each video might have its unique Nest.js feature that I'll be walking us through. And I'm going to start by walking us through stuff like controllers, providers, modules. So what are all these modules, and how can we actually send requests and receive back a response with Nest.js? But we would also dive in depth by taking a look at pipes, guards, interceptors. So how about security? Because each application should have, or any serious application would have a security layer. So we'll also be taking a look at authentication and authorization. And the idea is for us to build a blog API, because this demonstrates all these features where we can have things like permissions, where we can obviously have different routes and different authorization routes that we might need some permission, and also going on to dive in depth in Nest.js. So let's go back, and now the Nest.js CLI has been completely installed globally. I'm going to cd to my desktop in order for me to create a new Nest.js application, and we are going to say nest new, and now it needs the name of the project, and I'm going to call this blog API in my desktop. And this will ask me which package manager will I want to use to install this. I'm going to go with npm. You can use whichever package manager you've got installed. Now I will come back once the installation is done and continue. Okay, so we have the blog API done, and what I'm going to do, so you can easily drag this and open in Visual Studio Code, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the I'll first of all need to cd into the blog API, and I'm going to use the code.command to open up this application in Visual Studio Code here. So this is the project that the Nest.js CLI creates for us, and it gives us an app controller.spec.ts file, which is used for testing. We have an app controller, which we are going to get into so what controllers are, but let's quickly take a look at modules. So what is a module? And a module, basically, if we come to our main.ts, we see that the Nest.js factory creates an application using the app module. Okay, and this module must groups together the different components of our application. So our services, our controllers, more like the house of the different features of our application. Okay, and we have the app service, and this is the layer that discusses with our database, and stuff like that, and sends back the response to the controller. Now, in order for us to start easy, I'm going to be deleting this file. So the app controller and the app module. Also, I'll leave the spec because we might do some testing. Okay, now so now we don't have the app module anymore like this. Okay, and we have an error because the Nest factory needs what it needs. a module. So it needs a module in order for us to start the application. Okay, let's quickly go get rid of the app service itself. Okay, now let's go on to create a module. In case you want a detailed rundown on how this main.ts works, I have a course that works how we can generate an application from scratch without the Nestjs CLI, and I'll link it up here so you can understand basically all these files and basically how this application starts. So I'm going to create an app module. So app.module.ts file, and it's a class. So we're going to export a class we'll call app module like this. And in order for Nestjs to be aware that this class is a module, we would need to import a decorator from Nestjs CLI. Sorry, Nestjs common. And that decorator is the module decorator here. And we use the decorator by using this @ sign, and then we write module like this. So now this module decorator here just provides a description, like information about this class. In this case, it's telling Nestjs that this class is a module. And this module takes in some metadata. So it takes in additional information. For now, we will just leave it empty like this because we don't have any other file here. So I'm going to save this. And coming back to the main.ts, now we need to give it this app module in order for it to create our application. So that's basically functionality of a module. We will be creating modules, we'll create services, controllers, all of that. So now let's go on to building our blog API. Let's go on to start laying out the foundations, and we will be starting by building out the post feature of this application. I'll create a new folder which I'll call post, and I'll start with the post module. So I'm going to say post.module.ts, and this is the naming convention. So we have post, which is the resource, and then we have the name of more like the description of what this kind of file is, and then we have ts, okay, for the extension. And as we saw earlier, so we need to import the module decorator from Nestjs common, okay, and we'll use it right away. So module like this, and we're going to export a class called module, called posts module like this here. Okay, so we are having an error. Let's see. Yeah, so because it needs some description, we don't have any, so we'll just leave it as empty like this. Now we have our app module, and we need to use this post module. So now this post module will be imported into our app module here, and we're going to import it in the imports array like this. So we'll say post module, okay. Now this makes Nestjs to be aware that we have a post module because we have the app module, and the Nestjs application is using this app module to create our application. So now if we import the post module in our app module, Nestjs is going to be aware of this of the module that we have. So let's go on to now create controllers, because controllers, as we would see, is going to help us to serve, to listen, or to handle HTTP requests. Let's go to the documentation. So now in the documentation, we can see that we have a request from the client side, a HTTP request, and this request is going to be funneled to the different controller that we are going to have in our application. So controllers are going to do what? Handle the incoming request and return responses to the client. So let's come over here, and in our post directory, I'm going to create a file which I'll call posts.controller.ts. Okay, so now we're going to export a class. Basically, most of the thing we'll be creating in Nestjs is going to be a class, okay? Like this. And just as we use the module decorator, we also have a controller decorator from Nestjs common that is going to mark this class as a controller, okay? And since we use the controller to handle incoming requests, we can go on to quickly create one request, which is going to be a post request. Now, in order for us to also create a post request, we get access to different HTTP decorators here. So we can use post, we can also use get, okay, we can also use patch, you see, so we can also use delete and all of them, okay. And I'm going to use the get request here, so the get decorator. So I'm going to create a method that says find all. So this is going to return a list of posts. Okay, now at this point we'll need to have a service. Okay, a service that is going to discuss with the database and return a list of posts. But we don't have a service yet, so what I'm going to do is return an array of let's just say an ID of 1 and a post or a heading of first post, like this. So this controller decorator also takes in an argument, okay, and the first or the argument that it takes is the path. So we're going to say this any request coming to /post and then a /path. So the path slash of this URL is going to come into this method, okay, the find all method, and return this response. In order for us to try this out, I'm going to be using an extension that is called REST client. So go on to install this extension if you don't have it already. Okay, you can obviously use whichever REST client you have, be it Postman. Okay, and now in the post folder, I'm going to create a new file called requests.http, and let's quickly give a comment here that will say fetch all posts. This is going to be a get request, so that's how we mark it, and http localhost 3000/posts, like this. So now let's go on to start our development server. So I'm going to use Ctrl+, otherwise you can come to view and come to terminal, okay, and I'm going to say npm run start dev. This command is going to start the Nestjs application in watch mode. So watch mode, basically we are going to listen to changes. Now if I send off this request, we see this response, okay, and this response is coming from our controller here as we defined it, okay. And let's go on to add another method, so also a get request. So we're going to be using the get decorator, and at this point in time, let's say we want to get a single post, so /post and then / with the ID of the post, so a white cat like this, okay. And instead of get post, let's actually change this to find all, okay, and then we can change this to find, like this. So any request coming to 3000/post and then /ID or any white cat is going to be handled by this method here, okay. And now over here we need to return something, so I will just return this particular post over here, like this. And if we come back to our client, instead of get post, we can just say get a post with a specific ID, okay. This is going to be a get request http localhost 3000/post and / with the ID of 1 here, okay. So I'll save this and I'll send this request, and we see the object that is being returned back from our post controller, which is nice, okay. So let's go on to also create another route, so a route that we can use to, let's say, create a post, and that's going to be created using the post decorator. So we're going to say at post. It also takes in the path, so just /, okay, and then we can just say create, like this. Now in order for us to create a post, we need to get access to the post body, and for us to get access to the body of the post, we also need to import body from Nestjs common, and in create I'm going to say at body like this, okay, and then the name. So we can call this body, and what type of post is this going to be? So we can say it's going to be of type any for now, okay, and let's return the body. So whatever post we get back, we are just going to return that post, okay, and let's go on to try out this route, and then we can go on to knowing how can we actually validate the body of our post. So I'm going to save this and come back to our HTTP client. I'm going to say create. So create a post or create post. Okay, this is going to be a post request to HTTP localhost column 3000 slash posts and then slash, just like this, or you can take it off. Okay, and we are going to mark this with content type, and then we say application JSON. Okay, and then you have to give a space and write out the body. And let's say a post is going to have an ID. Okay, an ID, so we can have an ID of 1. A post can also have a heading, and this heading we can also go on to say my second post, and description. Description is learning Nestjs, like this. Okay, so now we can go on to create this post, and we should expect to see this or get back the post as a response, because that's what we're actually doing in our controller. So we are just returning back the body of the post. So let me send out this post, and sure enough, we get it back as the response. So let's see, we are just taking anything from the body, and in a real application we would like to validate the body of our incoming request. So we want to validate to be sure that we are getting in what we have, and in order what we need, okay, for our application, in order for us to be able to validate our incoming post, we are going to be using a package which is the class validator and the class transformer. Okay, so I'm going to npm install class validator and class transformer, like this. Okay, so it's done. And coming back to the main.ts, we need to configure, because if we don't configure these packages we just installed, it's not going to work. So we need to configure so our app is aware of it. And how do we configure? We're going to say app.use, okay, use global pipes, like this. And we're going to say new validation pipe, like this. And it takes in some options. So we can say whitelist true. Now what this whitelist true, import validation pipe from Nestjs common. Okay, what this option does is going to strip out anything that is not required in the request body. So it's just going to strip it off in our validation. Okay, now let's go on to describe the type of post that we're expecting. So I would also come, in order for us to validate the body of our incoming request, I'll create a file named DTOs, like this. And DTOs stands for data transfer object. And I'm going to create a file which I'll call create post.dto.ts here. And it's going to be a class, so I'm going to export it right away. Export class post DTO, or create post DTO, create post DTO, like this. Nice. So now we need to configure. So we're going to say our post is going to have, first it should have an ID. In reality, we should not be expecting the ID from the client, so I'm just going to take it off. So we're just going to say our post is going to have a heading, which is going to be of type string, and our post is also going to have a description, which is going to be of type string. Okay, so going on, we are also obviously going to be adding more fields to our post, but in creating a post, you must create a heading and a description for the post. Okay, now we have our DTO we are exporting, and we're going to come back to our post controller, and we need to import that DTO. So we need to import our create post DTO from our DTOs directory here. Okay, and now we're going to say our body is going to be of type create post DTO like this. Now let's go on to apply the validation. Okay, so in order for us to validate, we will be importing some things from class validator, and we can import a string, okay, just like this. And we have quite a lot of them which we'll be using. So if we just say is, so we can have is alphanumeric, is boolean, is number, and length. So if we want to, let's say the heading should be of a specific length, okay, and there are much more. So we can start by saying is string. So this is going to say our heading should be of type string, and also our description should also be of type string like this. Okay, and for us to also use the length, you can say length, and so it needs a minimum and optionally a maximum. So we can say a heading should not be less than 5 and maximum should not be more than 15 like this. So now we are validating our DTO. We are having some rules to validate our DTO, and in this case we are validating our request body. Okay, and let's go on to log this body to the console. So let's go on to log it to the console, and now if we send our request, we see the body here in the console. Okay, but now let's take off the heading and let's also send the request. So we get 400, okay, because heading must be longer or equal to 5 and heading must be a string. So we get a status code of bad request, okay, 400, and we need to provide the heading for it to work. And if we provide a heading that is, let's say, 1 character, not up to 5, we also say heading must be longer or equal to 5 characters. And see how easy it is for us to automatically go on to validate the body of our incoming request. Okay, now let's move on to services. Let's go on and know how can we work with services in Nestjs and what are their uses. So back in our post directory, I'm going to create a file which I'll call post.service.ts. okay, and to mark this as a service, because we are going to be injecting at some point, we are going to be injecting other things into our service. So we can have a user service that we inject into our post service, and we can have an entity or a repository that we need to inject in our post service. It's always a good practice to mark this as injectable like this. Okay, and now we're going to export. Injectable needs to be imported from Nestjs common. So I'm going to export a class which I'll call post service like this. Okay, nice. And now you would be able to see that the service and the controllers are definitely going to have more like different same methods, okay, but separating the service from the control, for one, it makes the controller lean, and it also makes our service testable, so we can go on to test units of our application. Okay, so we are going to define the find all, the get, and the create method in our post service. So we're going to say find all like this, get, and then create. So we want to find all, and for finding all, I will just copy this over here and return. So at this point, this is where this method would discuss with the database and get the post and return the actual post. But we don't have a database set up yet, so we're just going to return hard-coded data. And to get a particular post, I'm just going to return this. And to create a post, now we need this actually takes in a parameter, okay? And this as well takes in a parameter. So it takes in an ID, which is a string, because we would need to know which post is it that we need to return, okay? And to create a post, it also needs a body, or it also needs a post, okay? And this post is going to be of type now our create post DTO, because we can obviously use our DTO over here, okay? We are creating a post and we need the post to also have a heading and also have a description, okay? So we can do like this. And we can now return an object which is going to have a heading of body.heading, and it's also going to have a description, which is going to have our body.description like this, okay? Or you can just return the entire body here. So now let's come over to our post controller. Sorry, this was actually meant to be in the service, so I'm going to cut this from here and yeah, return here, and just say post heading. Okay, beautiful. Or you just return the post, okay, for now. So coming back to our post controller, I'm going to delete all of this. Like this. Okay, so for now our controllers, they are not returning anything. How do we now make use of the service in our post controller? So how do we use our service to be able to make requests? Now for our post module to be aware of a new a service, so we have a service, it needs to be aware, okay? We are going to come to our post module and we'll have a providers array, and we are going to provide our post service here, okay? So now our application is aware of our post service, and that makes it easier to use. And then we can now use our post service in our post controller by using our constructor. So, and we're going to create a private, perhaps read only variable. We are going to call post service, which is going to be of type post service, okay? So now we have a reference to our post service in our post controller, and in find all we can now go on to return this dot post service, and then dot what, dot find all, like this, okay? And this is what it returns. And same in getting a post by ID, so we can go on to return this dot post service dot get. Perhaps we should use find. So when find all, we should use find. Let's quickly change this to find, like this, okay? Dot find, and it needs an ID. So now we have this wildcard ID. We need to get, or we need to extract it, and for us to be able to take in parameters from our request, we would need to use the param decorator like this, okay? And we would come to find and call param here. It needs a name, okay? It needs a name. We're going to call this ID, okay? And here we'll call this ID, call it ID, and say this is going to be of type string. And now we can pass this ID over to this find method. And to be sure that we are actually extracting the ID from the request, we can just log it to the console. Okay, so let's go on and send off this request. Okay, so first getting all posts. Nice, we still get back all the posts. Getting a post with an ID, let's say 10, and let's watch the console. Nice, we see 10 and we still get back the response. And let's try to create a post. Okay, are we returning anything? So let's see if we are returning anything from our post service. Okay, we are returning the post, and in our post controller, we are not handling it yet. So return this dot post service dot create, and then we'll just pass the body to it. Okay, and let's quickly test out creating a post, and then we get our response. So a quick walkthrough on how our application is working at this point in time. We have our app module, okay, and our app module is created, it creates our application using the next factory, okay. We also register our validation pipe, okay, for handling or for validating requests, incoming request body. We have our post module, and our post module we have just one controller and provider, okay. And if we check our controller handles incoming requests. Now we have a controller with just post, and we have these different methods and decorators. So a get request is going to take our post service and call the find all method, okay. And for also a get request to get in a specific post is also going to use our post service and find a post by ID. And we have also our create post, which takes in the body of the post. It also calls our post service and gives it the post body over here. Okay. Okay, guys, so this is it for this section. So we have walked through um, the Nestjs CLI, we have walked through controllers, we have walked through modules, services, we have seen the power of decorators. We have also created DTO, where we can validate incoming request body. And in the next lecture, we are going to level up to use type ORM and also have a database. And this will now enable us to, you know, start moving on to building the API that we hope to achieve. So guys, do like the channel, subscribe, and I'll be releasing more content like this discussing about Nestjs. See you guys later. Take care. Bye.